One of the most difficult things for allosexual people to understand about the ace experience is sex repulsion. And I know not all asexual people are sex repulsed, and I think that's important to talk about, but I really wanted to take a minute today to kind of talk to you about my experience being a sex repulsed ace person in America, in the world, etc. One of the important things to point out this early on is that sex repulsed people are not necessarily anti-sex. I think it's a misconception that people will see a sex repulsed person and automatically think, oh, they don't want anybody else to have sex. They don't want any sex in the world. They're anti-sex. They hate sex. Not the case. Personally, if you want to have sex, that's great. I am sex positive for you. I think slut shaming is really bad. There's nothing wrong with having sex. I have no qualms about it. I just personally think it's disgusting and I would rather not do it myself, you know? But it is important to point that out because people seem to not realize that I am sex positive for others. I'm just not sex positive for myself, you know? Being sex repulsed in a sex normative society is very difficult. I have struggled with this basically for my whole life. Specifically, it really became apparent in middle school. I think that's a time when a lot of ace people realize they are asexual because everybody is talking about sex and it's the worst. I've had a very complex relationship with sex over the years. I am starting to get to a point now where I am much more chill about it. I don't care quite as much as I used to about how sex repulsed I was. Maybe it's because I'm becoming more sex positive, who's to say? But especially when I was in middle school, high school, college, like sex just scared the crap out of me. It still terrifies me to this day. But I was so incredibly sex repulsed and it does make me very uncomfortable, especially because most of my friends are very sex positive and I don't know what to do with them. It's very hard being sex repulsed because we live in a society today that is so sex positive, which is awesome. And I'm so happy that we've made that push where we're now at a place that like women can talk about masturbation and it's not quite as much of a stigma as it used to be, that people can talk about having sex and we can have shows like Fleabag that are so focused on sex and being okay with that. However, it's kind of like being a woman in a male-oriented world, you know, when all of the movies are about men going to war, what do I get out of that? Absolutely nothing. You know, when all the movies are about sex, what do I get out of that? Nothing. I don't know if you've taken the time to think about this. I have a whole thing about allonormativity in our world today. But if you take a step back and look at any of the media you've consumed recently, TV, movies, books, podcasts even, like whatever the case may be that you've been consuming, just pause and like double check and see. There's a chance, a pretty decent chance I'd say, that it has sex in it. Maybe not explicit sex, maybe not a long sex scene, maybe it's just a kiss or a romance or whatever, but like the chance that it has that is very, very high. There are so few stories these days that do not focus on sex, and it's exhausting. If you're allosexual, I feel like you probably may not notice it as much and it may not exhaust you quite the same way that it does me. But like if I'm watching a movie and we get a sex scene, explicit or not, long or short, doesn't matter to me. Anytime it happens, I just get this intense, uncomfortable feeling and I hate it. And like, there's nothing you can do. You just kind of have to sit through and watch it. And so one of the things that I've actually done for the longest time as an ace person in an allo world is I have forced myself to become more comfortable with these situations. And so I have to figure out ways to be comfortable. For instance, when my friends are playing Cards Against Humanity, when somebody makes a dirty joke, when I'm watching a TV show and people start talking about sex, you know, I'm not as fazed by it now as I used to be. There's still moments where I get very uncomfortable, where I can really like disassociate. But like for the most part, I can sit through sex scenes and not feel anything and not feel as repulsed as I used to, because I'm so conditioned by our society to think that like I want to have sex, you know, and I don't want to have sex. And I think sex is repulsing and I hate it. I can't explain to you how much I hate the idea of sex. Like for me, I think it's just like a physical thing. Like why would you want somebody that close to you, touching you, possibly inside of you? Oh, I can tell you a lot about the allosexual side of things. I can tell you what it's like to be an allosexual person, even though I am not one, because I have watched so many movies and it's upsetting to me. I think the most important thing to keep in mind if you're an allosexual person and you're interacting with somebody who is on the sex repulsed side of things is to just be very aware of when you're talking about sex. You know, for the most part, my friends have gotten to a point where they know where something is too far over the line for me, that they will, you know, if we're texting, they'll put it in invisible ink and say, Jenna, don't open that. And I normally do, just because I am I'm curious, and it doesn't end well for me, but like, it's being aware. I think that's the number one thing, because when you're sex repulsed, like, we cater ourselves to make sure that like we fit into this society every day. Whereas if you are the majority, most of the time you're not aware of, you know, when you're talking about sex. I have certain friends who will text me and be like, I know you don't want to talk about dating. I know you don't want to talk about sex, so I won't tell you anything. It's fine. It's more giving me the opportunity to say, I understand that you're going to talk about these things that make me uncomfortable, but I am opting in because I love you and I want to hear about your life. Versus I have had friends who are like, oh my God, yeah, like last week I like had sex and like this is what it was like and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, did I ask? Like, I don't want to know that. And more than anything, it's understanding the comfort level of the person you're talking to, because most of the time, like, I can deal with a lot. I can handle almost anything. I've seen a lot of things. I've read a lot of things. But, you know, if you have somebody who is talking to you who is very conscious of their talk about sex or relationships or romance or whatever, you know, it can make my life a little bit easier if I don't have to say, whoa, 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 I don't want to hear about the dick. I'm sorry, I don't care. You know, if you're already looking out for me, that makes my life so much easier and I'm so much less uncomfortable. So I don't know if that helps you or hurts you. If you are sex repulsed, maybe that makes you feel better because you understand that, like, the world is catered against us. I don't know, it's hard to say. But if you have questions about being sex repulsed, the comments are a really great section to talk that out, to understand, to get some more perspective about that, because being sex repulsed is exhausting. I truly, I hate that I'm saying this, but it is one of those things where sometimes I just wish I was sex positive, because I feel like life would be easier if I could just be okay with having sex. But the truth is, I like not having sex with people, and that's great, and I'm good with that.